Our first speaker. It's a great pleasure to present Vanessa Armstrong from Newcastle, and Vanessa will be talking about does a life science student's demographic background correlate with their access to careers, developmental opportunities, and academic achievement. Over to you, Vanessa.
Excellent, thank you very much, and thank you for letting me have the opportunity to talk today. Apologies, there's a lot of familiar faces here, and I did actually present this work, the plans for this work at the last Bioscience Summit at Royal Holloway. But at that point, I hadn't got any data, and I think I was a bit sort of down in the dumps, saying, oh, we've got to go through the DPIA, the GDPR, and all that kind of thing. Then suddenly all the data arrived, which was really, really refreshing. So I actually have some numbers and some data to share with you. So why was this study sort of set up and carried out? Well, it was following on from a project that I carried out with Kingston and Liverpool universities back in 2017, focusing on placements and the students that were taking placements and the barriers that the students face to these opportunities. And something that kind of came out of that was that there were quite a few more barriers at Newcastle, with our Newcastle cohort, than there were at the other two institutions. Moving away from home and finances was something that the students acknowledged were issues in stopping them take these opportunities. We know that undertaking opportunities, as we mentioned yesterday, that are vital for students to gain employment. Having a good degree from a good university is no longer enough and sufficient. They need to do extra things. We have a lot of different opportunities that we offer at Newcastle, but one thing, as the academic lead for employability, which I did in the school for 10 years, and Harley has taken over the reins for that, maybe for another 10 years, was that I was seeing the same names, the same students were doing all the things that we offered. And they'd be doing an exchange abroad, they'd be doing an optional placement year, they'd be doing the lab assistant roles, and it was the same engaged group, and quite a small group. And with all these things in mind, with the previous research and with what I was seeing on the ground with my students in the School of Biomedical Nutrition and Sports Sciences, the bioscience students, not everyone was doing it, and I wanted to find out why they weren't doing it and try and get some numbers to see who was doing these and some of the wider opportunities that the university offered. So it was a project that is still very much ongoing, and it was co-run with SNARES, which is in a different faculty in our university, but they have degrees including zoology, a biology course, and marine biology. So we put them all kind of together, and then we also separated them out. In our biomed school, it was things like biomedical sciences, physiology, pharmacology, biochemistry, and genetics that we were looking at. So those are kind of give you the background of the students that are involved. We want to understand the characteristics and demographics of these cohorts of students. And we were quite ambitious that we were looking at from 2015 registration all the way up to 2021 registration. So that was it's over 6,000 students that we were looking at the data here. From their registration data and from the data that gets updated as the students progress through a system we have called S3P. So that's all captured in this thing called Business Warehouse, and then we did a massive data dump. We wanted to see what their engagement was with opportunities, and we had a really, really broad selection of opportunities. It became obvious that not everyone across the university was capturing data as we would like. Quite often they weren't writing the codes, the degree codes that the students were doing. They'd missed out names because we needed to do this just by student numbers. And I think probably everyone's faced this, that there's lots of different systems in a university, so not everything is captured as we would like. But the idea was to find out why everyone isn't doing it, why certain groups doing this, and to work out what we could do about that and potentially put some initiatives and some additional developmental opportunities in there. So what we did a survey, student survey. The response rate wasn't fantastic. We did that in semester 1 of the 2021 academic year. So I hadn't got that data. I think I was just talking about that being a plan. And we analysed that, working out what the students were doing, finding a bit more about their characteristics that they identified with that weren't captured on registration, and working out what were the barriers and what were the motivations for doing these opportunities. So I've got a slide of analysed data. The business warehouse is where all the data about the students' characteristics from registration via the UCAS and then updated throughout the course. So that's the business warehouse data for the 2 schools. And then we also were fortunate enough to gain access to data from the student union. Little did I know that that was a completely separate entity to the university, so we had to go through a whole set of different documentation, different DPIAs, different data management, but they were really, really keen to provide that data. But again, they didn't capture the data from 2015 in the way that was usable. We only had 1 year set of data from them, but that was really quite insightful and useful. I'll mention that data. We then carried out some interviews, and we've done this more recently over this summer period with one of my interns, is trying to recruit students from some of the underrepresented groups and to kind of sort of personalise it, ask a little bit more about, well, what have you done? Why haven't you done it? And that kind of thing. So we've got some information there as well. And then we've kind of put it all together, and then we've got a list of things that we want to maybe implement or suggestions to help everyone access these opportunities. So sorry, there's a lot of things going on in this slide. So this is from that original survey that we used the JISC platform for. We had 178 respondents across the 2 schools, which isn't great, but student survey responses, I think everyone will have experienced this, aren't as high as we would like. So we asked what they were doing, what activities were they doing, why they were doing it, what they'd like to do in the future, and were there any barriers to them taking part. Now, this was kind of early sort of semester 1, 2021. So not surprisingly, I've split the 2 schools. COVID pandemic was kind of one of the big reasons that was preventing opportunities were reduced as a result of that. Financial feature for both schools as well. The data is pretty similar there for both the schools. And it'd be interesting to see what other students didn't want to move away. So I mentioned that was something that was highlighted in the original project that I did in 2017. Yeah, there's reluctance, they don't want to go anywhere else. And this idea of concentrating on studies also featured. So yeah, lots of different shades of speech to go around. But there were other things like lack of confidence, feeling shy. That was also something that came across at the interviews as well. So that is definitely something that we will need to address. So we had that massive dump of data from the business warehouse, 6,462 students. And we did it all via student ID numbers. That was the only way that we could link any of these data sets, and we had to take out names. Obviously, so yeah, there was lots and lots and lots of data. So this is just one slide, kind of some of the highlights. And it's probably not really that surprising to you that local students are more likely to have challenging disability compared to the overall cohort of students. Mature students as well, represented there. Local students and mature students are more likely to be the first generation of their family going into higher education. And the opportunities that we identified, so these opportunities include things like doing an exchange, doing a placement, doing a summer vacation studentship, doing what we call an NCL Plus Award, where they kind of get evidence in the badge, say that they've done some good things. The WP students were underrepresented across all of the opportunities, which isn't really a surprise, but it's, at least I've got the numbers now to kind of prove what I was kind of thinking. And placement students, that they've grown massively across our university over the past sort of 3-4 years, but 93% were white. So again, we know that our cohort isn't 93% white, but again, we have some misrepresentation of the student body with placement years. Some of the extra data here that we've got when we look at the outcomes. So what I originally wanted to do was look at graduate outcomes from the GEO data. Now, I don't know if anyone works with graduate outcome survey data. It is, I've been told, it is possible to find out which student answered what and do a decoding thing and to actually map that, because that was my original plan, was to map the graduate outcome data for those that are filled in the GA. but yeah, we haven't got capacity, time, functionality, or anything like that to be able to do it. So it's kind of, I can't do that. So we ended up looking at degree outcomes of those right oriented, and we've classed them as those that got first and 2-1, and some of the opportunities that we looked at here on the slide. So you can see that both the shades of blue column are pretty similar across there. The biggest difference is NCL plus the board. So perhaps suggesting that those that didn't get 32-1, some of them were also taking this award. But there's a strong correlation there between first and 2-1s and taking these opportunities, which isn't really rocket science. It isn't perhaps something that you go, oh, the surprise, but I've got the numbers to show. When we look at those that kind of failed the failure, and we can see there are some differences here. So the red is a portion that failed the degree. It's quite a small number, only 50 of the 6,000 odd students. And comparing that to the rest of the cohort, first generation higher education, mature students, males, and those individual people were kind of overrepresented. Again, it's not really probably a shock, but it was due to the far big cohort, those numbers. So the student union data, so these are all the opportunities we've got data for the student union. We've got the clubs like the sports clubs, we've got the societies like the baking club, the dance, things like that. And again, we've got sort of looking at the club members, a small group of 5 individuals, the rest of the cohorts. And you can see here that again, we've got some slight differences with some of the groups. I'm not going to go into the whole group. I know before that isn't the ideal way, but this is how our data was captured in the business warehouse for that time period. But we can see that a little overrepresentation of whites, under male, parental and higher education, gone to higher education was higher than those that partaking in clubs, and mature students and those that were local with the North postcode were actually less likely to be involved with one of the clubs. Societies, we thought we were likely to here, but quite similar sort of patterns really that we're seeing, that we have got some accessing wider participation, but we have got more representation of those students relative to the cohorts. That's kind of positive. That they are accessing societies, but I haven't shown it on here, but that wasn't the case for clubs and sports clubs. Got the next. Volunteering. So males drastically underrepresented volunteering compared to the cohort, and white students kind of a little bit underrepresented there, and the quintile 5, so that's the students that are from sort of what we call perhaps the most advantageous backgrounds, less represented compared to the volunteering. Give it a go. Again, it's another volunteering, a short-term units, volunteering opportunity that is the new one. We can see here that we've got a few sorts of now again males with underrepresented, white students underrepresented, parental and higher education with a little bit over, and not such a big gap between those that are local students and those that lack the WP program were actually more likely to be doing a voluntary and give them the opportunity to pass the rest of the cohort. So the interviews, I'll just be very, very brief on this. There's a lot of text on here. So we did 18 interviews, 16 of those were with the bioscience students, 2 were in the other faculty, and asking what activities they were doing. They want more advertising, they wanted support for demographics, that's something they suggested, events in schools, commuter students. We don't capture commuter students in our data, so that's a little bit tricky to sort of find, but hopefully that's something we're going to be doing at university level. They recognise they're important, and they wanted to do it for pleasure rather than for their CV. So what we're going to do about all this, well, potentially the targeted support is a little bit of a tricky one. I'd like to think that we would enhance and encourage them all to do it rather than segregating groups, but based on the data, the clear group difference is, I think money is a big thing, and I think the university needs to put its mouth, its mouth is, and actually support and give some bursaries, give some grants for all these opportunities. Putting things in normal working days, I think is really important as well. Target perhaps other subject areas across the university, something that we're thinking about doing, and just hoping to kind of gain better graduate outcomes for all of our students. So that was just literally a snapshot. There's an awful lot of data, and I can't take credit for any of the data analysis. I have a team of interns that have been working on the project the past year, but we needed support with getting the data. You need to know who to ask for the information, and that took quite a bit of time working out who these gatekeepers are that are going to help us out. And we did get some funding from the University Education Development Fund. So that's, I will stop.
Thank you very much indeed, Vanessa. I didn't see any questions on panelists. Can I take a question from the audience? Nick at back.
So did you say that your university couldn't tease out the data set, but it was a commuter and what?
Yeah, it hasn't been captured in our business warehouse data. The way that we got our commuter, I haven't shown it there, was from the survey that we asked the students, which is a small percentage replied, and also from the interviews. So that wasn't captured. I know that you've done a lot of work at Kingston, and I've been intrigued. I've been trying to find out who to ask. Why aren't we capturing this?
Yeah. So James is very keen on institutions adopting, processes to enable this kind of analysis. It seems like you're doing all the groundwork for your university, but something in the state university should be doing that automatically for us.
You would think, yeah.
Defining commuting students is one of those areas that there's just no agreement on between different universities how to do that. I think that's something we've got to work on as a sector. Everyone agrees it's important, but no one can define it.
There's a significant project going on at the moment to try and get all the things together to sort of help in two different places. There's a team now working at projects together to make sure that everyone plays with central dashboards.
Yeah. So that student observation about them needing better advertising, we found that at Kingston. When we did just nuance the offer slightly, we had much greater uptake from our underrepresented students, and that was then leading to better degree outcomes. So it's well worth nuancing the advertising of the extracurricular opportunities to the students.
So that would be Harley.
One more question. Yeah,
so I know you said you weren't sure about whether you wanted to target specific people or not. But if you decide you did want, are you allowed to know who they are?
I'm not too sure. It's funny. It's really hard to find out who any of our students are, which is what kind of came out of this. I've learned a lot about my cohort. I didn't know what percentage were female, what percentage were international, and we haven't got that information. It's not readily available. But I'm not quite sure about how that, whether you have a summer school, whether we can target students through participating in the summer school, which they get a reduced offer for those at WP. Whether that is kind of knowing what I can do, and can I just get the partners central team to could you target? It's a little bit tricky, so I don't really know, and I think it's that whole blurry area of we can do things, implement things at our school level that we as best we can, but it's what's allowed.
So that's exactly the way I feel about what's allowed. Because I've got lots of things words about, but I've got a foundation year teaching for the engineering faculty, State University. Each one of my tutees I get loads of information from to try and prevent them from failing. So hang on, within my institution, I get, this is this tutee and this is their, school status and their postcode and all the possible flags. I thought, this is in one institution. Engineering clearly knows this, and they're happy to share it with personal tutors. In science, they're pretending they don't know or genuinely don't know, and they're certainly not. So I was just I was just wondering exactly that. If you want to do something, do you have the agency to do it?
Well, there's lots to say, but we should wrap up. So thanks very much, Vanessa.